So, had an interesting experience the last 2 days. The last 2 days, I have been in jury duty. And it was interesting because one of the questions that was asked in voir dire.
Want to define some terms?
Yes, it's the voir dire. It's the part where they ask you questions before they pick a jury. So the basic process, if you've never been through this, is you get a summons in the mail that says you have to go to jury duty. And then in most cases, you call in and find out if they actually want you to show up. Because very often, the closer you get to a trial, trials magically disappear. And it's because the pressure is mounting up on the chances of, like in this case, in criminal cases, it's mounting up on the fact on somebody that they could be convicted. And so sometimes they chicken out and make an agreement or whatever. And so they just go away. So you call in and, like, I was supposed to still be on jury duty next week, but that case for next week has already been settled. So it went away, so I don't have to go. So you get that, and you call in, and they said, yes, you need to show up. And so yesterday morning, I showed up, and I won't go into the COVID specific. There was weird COVID specific stuff this time. Like, we had to go to a place that wasn't the courthouse because they had to spread us out at first. None of that really matters. You just follow the procedures. But they need a jury. In this case, it was a criminal case. And so juries for criminal cases typically are 12 people. And they need some alternates. In this case, they wanted one alternate. So they were going to pick 13 people. We didn't know that going in, but they're going to pick 13 people. And when they started, they had somewhere around 50. I know that there was a gentleman who was at least number 50. I can't remember if he was the last one or so. I was juror number 30 in that initial one. And then you go into this process where they very much are going to pick them in order. What they actually did is they did random numbers and seated us in a random order. And numbered us. That's where I became number 30. And it became very quickly obvious that they were going to pick from the front row back. They were going to pick starting with number 1. Because one of the things that happened is they didn't ask any questions at all to those of us in the back, not specifically, including me. From 30 on, I was not asked any questions, which was anyway. So let's go back a step. One of the questions they asked was whether the prosecuting attorney had asked if there was anybody who had a reason they really didn't want to be there. And they had asked things like COVID. Is there anybody who's really bothered by being in this room? And there was one elderly lady who was really uncomfortable. She was like, I haven't been out of my house. I haven't been to the grocery store in over a year. So I don't want to be here at all. And they went, okay, go home. There's 50 people here. We don't need you. So sent her home. There was somebody else who I'm going to get into at some point here going forward. This may be a couple of episodes, but I think bailed on it. Just bailed on us is what she did. She used COVID as a way to get out, I think. No, I think she was just a COVID freak and was panicked about everything. And so she used, COVID, she couldn't do it, which I'll talk about more because I want to talk about why I think she should have stayed. But in that process of, is there anybody who just doesn't want to be here? They'd asked if there was anybody who'd had a very bad experience being on a jury before. And there was one person who said yes, but stayed, and actually ended up on our jury. It was interesting though, because, and he talked about how the decision they made bothered him a lot for quite a while afterwards. He was uncomfortable with second guessing himself and so forth. And I'm just sorry, I'm having a recollection right here as I do it. The guy who I found really difficult may have been that guy, which may be why he was so difficult in our jury. But I don't know that for sure. Anyway, and I'm not going to use any names or anything, even the ones that I know, but even though I can. So she had gone through these questions of, is there basically, why don't you want to be here? And then she says, is there anybody excited to be here that really wants to be, that is excited to be on the jury? And nobody said yes. And it was interesting because at the very end, after we'd made the decision and everything, at the end, one of the ladies said, I almost raised my hand because I was kind of, I kind of wanted to be here. And I said, it was interesting. I said, I wanted to be on the jury too. I just wasn't excited. Excited was the wrong word. Had she picked another word, like interested in being here or intrigued to be here or enthused. I don't know. Excited was the wrong word. It's a criminal trial. Are you excited to sit in judgment of this person? No, I wouldn't say that's the proper word. And I'm not sure I want a jury of people who are excited. The interesting thing is I was also hesitant to speak because I believe I got thrown off a jury at least one time in my life for expressing that I was kind of interested in being on the jury. A similar question had come up. This was back when we lived in Ontario. I got called for jury duty, and it was a much smaller group at that time. But I recall them going person by person and talking to us and asking me what I thought of being there. And it was one of the only interactions I had. And I said, I'm interested in being here. I think it's part of the process. I'm interested to be in part of the process. I think it's an interesting thing as an American and so forth. And poof, I was off the jury. And so I didn't, to me, because of who I am, I kind of had this sense if they ask me any questions, I'll get thrown off. But on the other hand, I was sitting there with 50 people in the room and knowing, I'm counting the seats over there. At the time, I wasn't sure how many they're picking. But I could tell there were only like 12 or 13 seats, and I'm in 30, and I'm like, there's no way they're throwing enough people off to get to me. And sure enough, I was the last person picked. And so I became juror number 13, which was interesting. If anybody knows me, we race as car number 13 all of the time. 13 is a big number for us, where it's a positive number for us, so I became juror number 13, which would make me the alternate, but the way they actually do it is they, at least here, and I don't know how they do it every place, but at least here, the alternate juror was not designated until the end. So you sit through the whole trial, and then just before they send us out to make the decision, they randomly select one of the jurors to be the alternate, and then that person gets to leave. They've sat through it, but they don't need to do anything else unless in the next couple of hours one of us keels over or something or decides we can't go on or whatever, then that person will be called back in. So she was able to leave at that time and went back to the jury room. I may here talk about the case at some point, but not now. I want to talk more about the general idea of being on a jury and why was I interested in the jury process. And we had a chance to talk with the judge afterwards and just had some time to think about it. To me, there are unique things about being an American that certainly were unique about America originally. And this juror process is a huge piece of it. This concept of the trial by jury was not totally unique to America. A couple of other places ended up trying it. The French tried it during the French Revolution, and it went horribly wrong for them. They were very, very bad at it. But this idea, previous to that, you had the world of a divided world of lords and nobility who were property owners and the serf society. Most people lived on property they didn't own. They didn't have property. They lived in someone else's world. And the way conflict or law was carried out was primarily in the hands of this upper class. And that you might be charged, you could be brought before them by your neighbors, or you could be brought before them by the government, the sheriff, these people, and you would have a decision foisted upon you from above. And so a system where you'd go before him and a judge would decide your fate. That would be much more what existed in most of the world. And the Founding Fathers said, no, that doesn't need to be that way. Well, from being a juror, it's an interesting thing that you go, there's so much trust in this system put on the untrained ordinary people in the whole thing. And in some really fascinating ways that I knew about, but to experience it, I've never been on a jury before, to experience it was really unique. The process puts a lot of trust in a couple of things. It puts trust in the idea that a group of people can think better than an individual. That there is inherent wisdom in 12 people versus one person. And the judge indicated, she said, I can't say anything about this case, but she said, I'm often fascinated at how good the work of juries are. That how often they make very wise decisions based upon, she's fully trained, has many years of it, has passed the bar association and everything. She sits there watching the same trial as the jurors see, and the jurors come back with a decision that seems very impressive to her. That they caught all of the right stuff, and a piece of it is they got 12 people working towards the same goal. That it trusts things like the people who are put in that position will take it seriously. It trusts that most people are reasonable, most people are intelligent. This is one of these things that kept popping out to me, that much of our political society suggests to the world all of the time that we're stupid and incapable, that we can't be trusted to take care of ourselves or to make decisions for ourselves, or we just can't be trusted. We're stupid. It's regularly that we're stupid. We just can't possibly understand. And yet, one of the most important things to the liberty of the individual is placed in the hands of what is supposed to be 12 people like you. And I think it very much is 12 people like you. And I have a renewed faith in the fact that it's 12 people like you, no matter who the hell you are. Because there's 12 of them there. So you're likely well represented out of the 12. You might not be if you are a homicidal maniac. But that's good. That would be a difficult jury. They'd be killing each other. But it's this interesting thing. And that I have regularly told business owners as they're putting together their agreements between partners, for instance, I firmly believe and have had it repeatedly demonstrated to me that if you write agreements in plain language people can understand, it holds up in court. Why? Because the people who are going to make decisions about it are regular people. And they don't like it when lawyers do lawyer speak. And there was a lot of that in the last couple of days. The jurors did not like it when lawyers got all technically lawyery on each other, when we're going, just tell us the shit. And it was interesting because I'd never been in the jury's box before, to have the feeling, to realize on television that, it was funny, yesterday I came home for lunch, watched Law and Order during lunch, and then left to go back to the jury. And it was an interesting thing to go from pretend court to real court. And the one thing that you don't see in that is that on television court, they talk to the TV. In real life, they talk to the jury. Everyone talks to the jury because they're the only people in the room who really matter as to what you're trying to do. So you're sitting there and it's their job to convince you stuff. And that was very interesting, that feeling of, and they, for the most part, they have no idea who we are. But there's these 12 random people, there are 13 of us, and they've got to make us understand. They've got to make us get it. And it really works good. That's one of the amazing things is this concept. Some of the political concepts that we might talk about some other time, of the idea of the racist country and those sorts of things, some of that is really only truly understandable if you've never been on that side of it and go, wait a second, you have to have convinced this whole group of people to do the thing. Our case involved an assault on a domestic partner, and so this guy beat up his ex-girlfriend, and it was even discussed in the room because we found him guilty on 4 of the 5 charges, and it was brought up in the room. God, it'd be nice to just convict him of all 5, because there's no doubt he beat her up, and because of that, we don't like him. He's a dick. We'd love to just convict him of the whole thing, but as a group of 12 people, you'd have had to talk all 12 of us into doing that, and we weren't willing to do that because we could also, there was enough in the room, the ability to go, what if I was accused of something I didn't do? And the basic things like the presumption of innocence. God, they're just some from our founding of the entire country brilliances sitting there that were demonstrated, and they've changed. It's one of the things that's changed very little in the history of the country, is that sense of a group of people will be called out randomly out of society, and they will sit there, and then lawyers who have been around for the whole country will present to them information and evidence, and then not the lawyers, the 12 normal people or whatever are going to decide the fate of the person. What a just monumentally brilliant idea. It's something I have real faith in, something that I watched how we went about the process, and how much I think a group of people is a very trustworthy thing to put your fate to. That I just watched a random group of people do it, of obviously varying IQs and educational backgrounds and experiences and political perspective, of racial variations, of all of these things combined into one space, and what you got was a very nuanced, very high quality result. Honestly, I think they got a result far better than the prosecutor or the defense deserved. That was an interesting thing. I think the prosecutor did an okay job, but not great by any stretch of the imagination. And I think the defense did a horrendous, actually did no job almost. I'm not going to say he did no job, because there was obviously lots we don't see as a jury. And there were things going on, and he made his decisions however he made his decisions. But even within that, I think he left it wide open for us to convict on a lot of stuff. And I think there were definitely, having been in the jury, I know it's like hindsight, but being on the jury side, there were some really simple things that could have been presented that would have got him off more of the charges that were not brought out, that I'd have a real problem if my lawyer did that bad of job. And I don't know the guy at all, but I was shocked at some of the things that didn't happen. But I think the jury rendered a decision that was better than either side there, which was an interesting thing to me. It was that TV regularly presents this idea that the jury can be manipulated into what you want by the lawyers and so forth. And looking at it from the other side, I think that would have been difficult, especially within the confines of what's there. So it was an interesting experience.